world is not a frontier. A long groove ran beside the wet footprints. The tip of a silver stake had scraped through the mud. Leon raised his torch and examined the collapsed drainage passage. The gap was just wide enough for a person to crawl through on their belly. Hardin approached, leaning on his sword.
I'll go first. You're staying behind. I can still walk. One more fight and you'll collapse.
Blood continued to stream from Hardin's forehead. The arm holding his shield was trembling as well. Leon looked around. They had fought 3 battles in succession at the South Gate, the ferry landing, and the abandoned mine. Few soldiers remained unscathed, and there were no reserves left to summon.
Move the prisoners and wounded outside. Store the explosives separately, and once that's done, report to the infirmary yourself.
Hardin started to protest.
That's an order.
After a moment he bowed his head.
You must return, my lord.
Leon selected a guard familiar with the mine trails and 4 soldiers still fit to move. Just before they set out, Yun Sioha checked the recovered equipment against the inventory once more.
One of the gauges is missing too. The list says there were 3 identical units, but only 2 were left in the crate.
They had overlooked it while counting the stakes after the explosion. The fugitive had clearly taken both a stake and a gauge. Yun Sioha gathered her flashlight and the equipment list. The 7 of them entered the low passage. At first the trail was clear. In the mud beneath the standing water, boot prints and the lines scraped by the stake continued in the same direction. The passage was so low that they had to strap their shields to their backs and crawl. With every breath, grit from the blast-fallen stone found its way into their mouths. After a long while, a cold wind blew toward them. They had reached an exit on the mountainside. One side of the rusted iron door had been cut through. Fresh, bright metal gleamed along the cut instead of old rust.
It wasn't cut from the inside.
At Leon's words, the guard examined the ground outside the door.
No, my lord, someone cut it beforehand from the mountainside.
A gray coat and a pair of boots had been discarded outside. The wet footprints ended there, with no bare footprints continuing beyond them. The fugitive must have prepared dry shoes in advance. One of the soldiers pointed toward the nearby main road.
Would he have gone to find a horse?
The guard shook his head.
The main road is a detour. If he knows the mine trails, he'll have gone this way.
He kicked aside a stone half buried among the weeds. A narrow path curved around the slope and continued west.
It leads to a hill with an abandoned ventilation shaft. Beneath it is a spent silver vein. This is a trail the old miners used.
Yun Sioha unfolded the inventory.
The missing stake and needle gauge must be a set. I think they place or drive the stake into several points and record how far the needle moves.
What does it measure? I don't know yet, but it isn't a simple mining tool. There must be a reason they designed it to work without electricity.
The guard looked toward the hill.
When the gateway is about to open, even the dead silver veins sing. They give off a low hum, and blue frost forms over the stone.
Leon quickened his pace.
If he intends to measure that reaction, he has no reason to flee down the main road.
The fugitive was trying to finish his work, not escape. The old miner's trail soon entered a narrow cut between quarries. Hewn rock rose on one side, while a steep drop fell away on the other. Moonlight touched the ground in scattered patches. Yun Sioha, who was in the lead, suddenly raised a hand.
Stop.
She crouched and pointed to the middle of the path. An extremely fine wire caught the moonlight and gleamed. One end disappeared behind a pile of stones. Without moving closer, Yun Sioha shone her flashlight on it.
It's a tripwire for explosives. That connector is from Earth 2. Touch the wire, and the explosives beside the path will detonate.
Leon looked back.
Can we descend the slope?
The guard answered quietly.
Not from here.
A bullet struck the rock ahead. Stone fragments grazed Yun Sioha's shoulder. The soldiers hurriedly ducked. A second bullet buried itself in the middle of the path. The enemy had both the approach to the tripwire and the rocks ahead pinned down. Leon took cover behind a cracked shield. The wire blocking the path lay right before them, and the shooter was perched among the dark rocks above. There was no time to turn back. Without waiting for an order, the mine guard surveyed the slope behind them. Between bullets striking the rocks, he lay flat, checked beneath a heap of rubble, and returned.
There's an old drainage route beneath the waste rock left from the mining. It's low, but it should run behind that outcrop.
Leon assigned 2 soldiers to him.
Circle around and get behind the shooter. Hurry, but don't make a sound. What about you, my lord? I'll keep him shooting at my helmet. The other 2 will protect Yun Sioha and me.
He borrowed an empty helmet from one of the soldiers. Wedging a short stick inside it, he slowly raised the helmet and torch above his shield. The bullet punched through the helmet. Burning splinters flew. A muzzle flash flared from a crevice in the rocks above and to the right.
I have his position.
Leon hurled the torch to the ground and sprinted toward the rocks on the left. A gunshot rang out just behind him. The bullet pierced the edge of his shield and scraped across the leather on his arm. He ducked into cover, then moved for the next rock. The enemy's weapon kept firing without jamming. Bullets tore through every gap where Leon might have shown his head. Meanwhile, the guard and 2 soldiers crawled into the low drainage channel, beneath the discarded rubble. Of the 2 soldiers who remained in front, one held his shield before Yoon Seo-ha while the other guarded Leon's back. The gunfire stopped for a moment.
He's moving.
Yoon Seo-ha spoke. The shooter was changing positions. He climbed to a higher ledge overlooking the flanking route. A soldier gave a short cry from the drainage channel exit. The bullet had grazed his leg. While the shooter's weapon was aimed at the flanking party, Leon sprinted to the tripwire. He stepped over the ankle-high wire without touching it, then pressed himself against the rocky ledge on the left. The low drainage channel did not emerge directly beside the shooter, but beneath the rocks behind him. The mine guard and the uninjured soldier climbed out there. The wounded soldier remained at the exit. The shooter changed positions again. He climbed onto a high ledge barely wide enough for one man and fired at Leon. The bullet slammed into the shield, knocking Leon's arm violently backward. But there was nowhere to dodge on that narrow ledge. Leon was coming up from the front, while the guard leveled his spear from behind. The remaining soldier stood behind the guard, blocking the shooter's retreat. The shooter swung his rifle toward Leon and descended 2 steps. The instant the long barrel caught against the rock, Leon pinned the weapon to the wall with his shield. The shooter released the rifle and drew a pistol. The guard's spear shaft struck his wrist. The pistol tumbled down the slope. The soldier behind him kicked out the shooter's knee, and Leon drove his shoulder into the man's chest. The shooter fell onto the narrow ledge. The soldier wrenched his arm behind his back.
Tie him up.
The captured shooter was not the man in the gray coat who had fled the abandoned mine. Leon seized him by the collar.
Where is the man with the stake?
The shooter kept his mouth shut, but from the hill he kept glancing toward came the sound of metal striking metal. Once the gunfire had ceased, Yoon Seo-ha approached the tripwire. She pointed to the metal fitting connected to the pile of stones.
Pull that ring out first. Don't touch the wire.
One of the soldiers who had remained in front pulled out the ring as instructed. The taut tripwire sagged to the ground, disconnecting from the detonator. Touching it would no longer set off the explosives. Leon left the wounded soldier and the prisoner in another soldier's care. Then he climbed the hill with Yoon Seo-ha, the guard, and the 2 remaining soldiers, stepping over the disarmed tripwire. Near the summit stood a collapsed ventilation shaft. Beyond it, the gateway's blue light was faintly visible. A low resonance spread through the ground. The mine guard's face went rigid.
It's begun.
The infiltrator was crouched before a collapsed wall beneath the ventilation shaft. A needle gauge and sheets of paper for recording measurements lay spread out in front of him. The exposed dead silver vein split before the wall, branching left and right. A black cable from the gauge ran beneath the rubble, its end hidden from view. It was impossible to tell by sight which branch of the silver vein held the stake. The resonance passed through the ground again. Blue frost spread through cracks in both walls. The needle on the gauge trembled, then moved to the right. At the same time, the mark on the back of Leon's hand grew hot. His wound split open, filling his glove with blood. His vision blurred. But for one brief instant, he felt heat like glowing metal emanating from one of the 2 silver veins, the one on the right. The stake was not in front of the infiltrator. It was behind the collapsed wall on the right.
The stake is behind the right wall.
Leon threw himself toward the right side of the wall. Only then did he see the silver stake driven more than halfway into the dead vein. Blue frost bloomed across its surface. The infiltrator reached for a handle beside the gauge. Leon did not charge at him. Instead, he brought his spear down on the cable connecting the stake to the gauge. The connector popped free. The needle swung wildly, then dropped back to the center. The infiltrator tried to write the final value on the paper, only to spit out a curse. He raised his pistol. Leon ducked despite his blurred vision. The bullet passed over his shoulder and buried itself in the stone wall of the ventilation shaft. He rolled across the ground and seized the stake with both hands. The back of his hand burned as though it were on fire. Gritting his teeth, Leon wrenched the stake sideways. It tore free of the silver vein and rolled across the stone floor. The blue frost rapidly melted away. The survey remained incomplete. The infiltrator hurled his empty pistol aside and lunged at Leon. The 2 grappled before the collapsed wall. The man's fist struck Leon across the cheek. Instead of drawing his sword, Leon wrapped his arms around the man's waist and dragged him to the ground. The man reached for the fallen stake. The mine guard pinned the back of his hand down with the shaft of his spear. The soldiers behind him seized both his arms and twisted them back.
Don't kill him.
Leon spoke between ragged breaths.
Tie him up. We're taking him with us.
Rope was wound around the infiltrator's wrists. Yoon Seo-ha picked up the gauge. The needle had stopped at the center. Several lines of numbers had been written on the paper, but the final line was blank.
He didn't get a complete reading.
Yoon Seo-ha retrieved the loose connector and reattached the black cable to the stake. When she brought the stake near the dead silver vein, the needle moved faintly. When she pulled it away, the needle returned to the center.
It definitely measures the silver vein's reaction. But I don't know how they plan to use it to alter the gateway's passage limit.
Now we have time to find out.
Leon entrusted the recovered stake and gauge to a soldier. They had captured the fugitive alive and recovered the missing equipment. The survey the enemy wanted had not been completed. A soldier searched inside the infiltrator's coat. He found an oil-treated pouch designed to keep out water. Inside were a folded hand-drawn map and an old miner's work badge. The guard unfolded the map. Roads and doors had been drawn with the simple symbols used in the local mines. Times were marked beside the south gate, the ferry warehouse, and the abandoned mine's work entrance. Leon asked,
What do those marks mean?
The guard's face hardened.
They're the guard changes. All three are correct.
The drainage passage they had just traversed was also drawn along the edge of the map. Beside the rusted mountainside door was a note instructing someone to cut it in advance. Leon picked up the old work badge. It was issued to those allowed through the mine entrances. The letters had been worn away, but the number was still legible. They had a local accomplice, someone who had cut the door in advance, and provided the shift times at all three locations, along with the old mine trails. Leon checked the number on the work badge, then hauled the bound infiltrator to his feet.
We're returning to the fortress. We'll start by finding the original owner of this badge.
He clenched the work badge in his bloodied hand.
The one who opened the way for them is still inside the fortress.